you see 515, 520, 540, but later in Katsina State. So shock with jolted a lot of people. But much as, well, yes, the president's comment about fuel subsidy was also there, and then they tried to adjust it. But they've had several meetings, Labour and federal government, the latest being that which involved TUC, and then you also had government representative. But Mr. Didarake did speak to journalists after that meeting, which happened yesterday, and here's what he said.
Very happy to announce to Nigerians that this engagement has been very productive. The TUC that attended today's meeting presented a list of demands. And those demands we have studied, and we are going to present to Mr. President for his consideration. But those demands, we can announce to Nigerians that a lot of the items on the list are not impracticable. What we need to do is to study the numbers very well, and then we have asked the TUC to also give us a leeway to consult, very exhaustively, and come back on Tuesday, reconvene on Tuesday to actually look at the numbers, the viability, practicability of all the items that have been presented to us. Now, most important, top priority on the list, which the government is also looking at very seriously, and the president has announced before, is the issue of the minimum wage, which the labor movement has demanded as a consequence of these removal of the consequential impact of the removal of subsidy. So government is looking at that, and Mr. President is most likely going to constitute a tripartite committee. That is a committee of federal government and including the states, then the organized labor on the other part, and the private sector. Now, this is a tripartite arrangement. It will be a committee that will study all the dynamics of a wage increase, the percentages, the numbers, and the categories that will be affected. So by Tuesday, when we come back to reconvene and meet with the TUC again, the labor movement, we should have very concrete items to present to the world. But the most important thing for today is that we are making appreciable progress with the labor.
Well, he says they are making... All right, well, he did say they are making appreciable progress on that matter. But the governor of Lagos State, Mr. Sanwo-Olu, also weighed in on the same matter. And here is his perspective.
To wish and plead with our citizens, even as NLC is I said to us they want to go on strike, it's not the time for strike. You see, the point is, during the campaign trail, every of our presidential candidates, 13 or 14 of them, all of them did say that the first thing they're going to do is to remove the subsidy. So what has changed? What has the current president said, or what has he done that is different from any of the other aspirants could have done? So, I mean, we need to be very patient. He's not even done a week, right? And so let us talk to ourselves and say that we shouldn't turn this thing political. Let's wait and support this man. He's not done a week on the job. Let him go and reflect, and at the sub-national level, we're ready to support him. So the point is not, any strike will not solve anything. It will certainly will not be the issue. The point will be, how are we going to ensure that there is a turnaround in our economy, that we can live? He has mentioned something around, a better wage. We have started that in Lagos. We're proud to ourselves that we started in January. so other parts of the country can also do the same. Right? We don't need to wait for national government. We just need to reflect, what the challenges are in our country, and let's be able to solve it. So I want to plead with the Nigerian Labour Congress, NLC, right? And it shouldn't turn into a political thing, because we're beginning to see that. And the man or the leadership should indeed, they should know that they are leading a pack of people, and they need to restrain themselves.
All right, so we decided to go down memory lane about 11 years ago when some of these matters was also very heated. So we dug into our archives, and here is a report that played out at the time in the heat of this fuel subsidy debate.
Whether they remove the subsidy or not, we will still be in problem. If they remove subsidy, they will share the money. They have already shared it before collecting it. They say over 400 billion will go to Jonathan's government. Over 400 billion will go to state government. Over 200 billion will go to local government. They have already spent the money before they earn it. They are just fooling color day to come and supervise an empty collection.
No force on earth can stop this revolution. The fact that I am here today with my children, with all these wonderful Nigerians, send the message to Abuja and wherever they are that the struggle for which we have been planning and working all these years have now taken off.
Governor of the Central Bank, Sanusi, came to Lagos and said, if you don't remove fuel subsidy, Nigeria will collapse. This country is not going to collapse. Those who are going to collapse are those who are cheating the Nigerian people.
When my father was fighting, I was 13 years old. I am 50 in 6 months. My son is 16. We still have no electricity. We still have no health care. People are poor. People are dying because of 10,000 naira in this country. And people are stealing. The greatest Nigeria.
For several hours, the speeches went on.
Democracy is government of the people, for the people, by the people. Who are the people of Nigeria? If we have democracy, you must listen to the voice of the people.
The government of our country has decided to impoverish us. We have decided to say no. The pump price of petroleum must revert to 65 naira.
And if anyone was thinking this was just a one-off, the protesters had this to say about that.
By tomorrow, when everybody's coming out, please do come with some mats. Come with some mats, come with some food. We shall sleep on the streets.
If they stay faithful to those words, the back here, less than 24 hours from now.
Under pressure, under pressure, under pressure, under pressure, under pressure.
Make of that what you will, but that's some history for us all to digest. But yes, the fallout of the meeting, which happened yesterday, another will be happening in the course of the week, and we will bring that to you as well. But some of the highlights of that meeting was that TUC did present some demands to government, part of which was that they want upward review of minimum wage. It's been going back and forth. And then they also, I think TUC Labour generally, they've been on this back and forth about fixing our refineries. In fact, they think that if we fix the refineries, we won't be going back and forth. We won't have so much of a headache if not all of those refineries are in good shape, and we are at least having to deal with those products and not export crude and bring it back and pay all of those costs. And then this question about providing palliatives, well, it was also a matter at the time. Not sure it won't be this time. We'll find out what happens with that one. But government on their part, you heard Mr. Lake, some part of that where he also did say, yes, it does appear as though TUC, we will look at your list. It's not exactly strange or impracticable. And then government is likely to convene a tripartite committee made up of organized labor and private sector to look at some of these matters. But you also remember that labor NLC was absent in that particular meeting, but some comments credited to TUC president says that NLC's absence is due to the federal government's call for an organ meeting, not the entirety of organized labor. When you call an organ meeting, an organ takes on a life of its own. So the decisions of your organ is what you're expected to implement. So perhaps that may give us some background concerning what transpired in that regard. So those are just some of what transpired. We expect another meeting on Tuesday, but that is what we'll be discussing here today. So I'll let my colleagues from Lagos take over.
Well, thank you, Chamberlain. We do have here Mr. Amaechi Asuguni, who is former Deputy President of the NLC. He's an industrial and labor relations consultant. He joins us in the studio here. Thank you so much for joining us this morning. Under pressure, 11 years and going and counting. But quickly, let's begin with that last comment of Chamberlain, that the NLC was not at that meeting with the FG and TUC yesterday. Is that over the weekend? Is that how significant is that for you?
I think the absence of NSC in this meeting of over the weekend, NSC considered it a strategy because he had informed or earlier told federal government to return to status quo, upon which negotiation will be done in good faith. And they felt their failure to do that was a neglect, and then calling that for another meeting. But I think some of us have extended our opinion that going forward, NSC will be present to virtually become consistent in your position, no matter the number of times federal government requests your presence. We just have to be consistent with our position as Labour. But the absence for this very one they're referring to was strategically done. And going forward, I think it was just to send message to federal government that they were not coming there for play, they were not coming there for purposes of sitting to talk, but solution-based meeting.
Well, how significant then is that, I mean, in the light of all of the conversations that are going on? A revert to the old price for the NLC. What is the import of that, given the position that the NLC is not unaware of, that the previous government already said subsidy ends by the end of June? So a revert to the old price, the NNPC's old price, how significant is that in the light of the law, the appropriation law that this present government is supposed to execute?
Yes, one thing we should understand now is the previous government was sensitive. They were careful. And what they did was to transfer a burden to the incoming government, knowing fully well they would have left by June. And then I expected a more strategic beginning from the sitting president, because it's very significant to begin with the statement that something you did not remove is removed, as though you did it.
No, I think maybe it's the understanding of that, not making any case for the president or his his team. What he began by saying under that subsidy headline was, the previous government already said there is no allocation for subsidy beyond June. As a result of that, fuel subsidy is gone. In fact, the Minister of Works and Housing, well, I don't know if he's still the Minister of Works and Housing, Mr. Fashola, before the inauguration on May 29th, said exactly the same thing.
But we are
aware. Is the NLC not aware of that?
No. The awareness of Buhari's action, even though subsidy ends with his tenure, does not end the government of Nigeria. And therefore, the statement that, or the action they took to reflect that after June come no subsidy, that was done politically because it was not announced officially. It was hidden under the budget plan.
But you know that the Minister of Finance said that repeatedly, that after June there is no subsidy.
Such statement had come earlier. They have made several of such statements that never stood. And therefore, nobody would have fought when you know subsidy. Even as we speak, subsidy is still on. So the fight of why you see NSC even asking for status quo to enable discussion done in good faith is because, as we speak, subsidy is still on. So how come we are seeing...
Who is paying what subsidy? To who? When you say the subsidy is still on, how is it on?
The product in the market has been subsidized up to June, and therefore marketers ought not to hike the price when it's not after June.
But marketers, aren't they also part of the NLC? Some of them part of the NLC?
That cannot be confirmed.
The workers at those fuel stations, aren't they members of the NLC?
But they are not the authorities to decide price. And therefore, what we are even seeing working negatively now is Mr. President had a good intention. The removal of subsidy is the struggle for all aspirants, including me. If you make me the president, I will work out modality to remove subsidy because it's criminal. But the question is, how do you remove subsidy? The removal of subsidy, you must consider the purpose upon which subsidy was put in place. So the first attack is to attack the reason for subsidy in the first place.
What was the reason for subsidy?
The reason was because we don't have refinery. And because we refine outside Nigeria.
But we had refineries in the 70s.
The 70s, refineries worked.
And that was when the subsidy started.
Because we are operating with a lower capacity. Nigeria ought to refine for what can carry our demand. And because of that insufficiency, federal government decided to pay the difference and get adequate supply from outside the country. Now that you want to remove subsidy, what have you done to refinery? The removals of subsidy, still depending on importation, means there is no end to price hike. And that is why you see reaction. It's beyond NLC. And when I see proposal of wage increment, people should be thorough when they give advice to president.
We'll come back to that one.
Well, Mr. Suguna, reaction is a key word there, and I'm just wondering, the president-elect did not make a policy statement, on inauguration day when he said what we already know, that subsidy is gone. Of course, the former administration had made it repeatedly clear that it didn't provide subsidy beyond June 2023. So why was the reaction that we got, that the NNPC now made a pronouncement of the adjustment of pump price of fuel?
So the question is, or let me take it this way. If Buhari administration actually planned to allow subsidy leave in June, how come marketers did not react until the statement of the current president?
Perhaps the question is, how come the NLC did not react?
No, NLC wouldn't have reacted when they know he was making statement that will exist after him. So when you say subsidy will go, when they know you are not in power, they know it's political. And no government would have just resumed office to remove subsidy that will put suffering on Nigerians. So they never...
Sorry, Bukola. When you say suffering of Nigerians, the question that some people have asked, I'm sorry, Bukola, the question some people have asked was, when the Naira, exchange was going on and things were really, really hard on Nigerians, the NLC didn't go on strike. The NLC didn't make any statement. The NLC just went with the flow. So why now, when it seems, even the NLC agrees that the subsidy needs to go?
NLC agrees. Don't forget, approach beget reaction. When you want, in the terms of Naira, in the terms of currency scarcity, you remember it was a matter of CBN trying to curb corruption for election. And then NLC was almost like, this may work in favor of our expectation if vote buying is our problem. So the reaction was not something you just go to the street and hit on strike, when the purpose for doing it is not just going to suffer you for a long time. It's temporary. And the election was just ahead of us. This policy is leaving indefinite suffering.
Pardon me, Mr. Asuguni. I wonder if you ask my question. I'm asking about the legality of the adjustment of the pump price of fuel to an action that was just an announcement of what was, as we know from the Buhari administration. How legal is the action of the NNPC to adjust the pump price of fuel?
That even complicated the statement of the president. Because when you say subsidy is gone, it means you have hands off your hand from regulation. And then how come NNPC now, were they fixing that price for NNPC filling station, or they were fixing the price for Nigerian market?
What do you think?
I can't imagine myself.
No, because their statement is very clear. It is for their own outlets.
So if it's the outlet, they should communicate with their filling station.
And the NNPC GCU was on our station and said that was not for public consumption. It was among them, but was leaked.
And so if it leaked, even that price, is it attainable? The price they gave to their own filling station to sell is not attainable. And how much supply can they give to Nigerians? They can't cover any range. And therefore, the reaction you are seeing now is beyond the working class. That is what I know.
And speaking of which, some have asked us to ask that all-important question. Is it legal for the NNPC to adjust the pump price of fuel under the Petroleum Industry Governance Act?
For me, I think the lawyers have said it's illegal. And therefore, NNPC, even though it was legal to do so, I think forces in the market are beyond NNPC. Because when you allow market force to determine price, you therefore cannot have a permanent price template. Otherwise, it will look as if the subsidy is still working with some people, especially the NNPC. What happens when you are buying products from different countries is that, depending on the landing cost, people will have different prices. And there is no way you'll be having a fixed price of a product that you don't know how you are going to purchase in the next month. So it was just a game, thinking that way, so more or less calm the tension. But it failed. Because Nigeria, even looking at the template of NNPC, could not secure confidence that they can afford it. I think the whole thing came as shock. It was too sudden to have that kind of change. And if Mr. President was making a statement, he would have also, you know, when you have a good intention, and strategy management may also fail intention. And therefore, what we expected was a program. Okay, imagine now you want to now roll out plans to avail to more or less I don't know how to call this palliative now, but it's still a secondary measure to cushion the effect of a statement made, not on subsidy now. Because Nigerians were going calmly. If he had allowed it to a point and then work out strategies to back up the expiration of that date, people will say he's even the one helping the former president who did not put strategy in place. But to just declare already stated point of end of subsidy and declaring it as if you are now making Nigerians to realize what they did not know before, that it will end in June, and as a person, I am not willing to extend it.
Let me follow up Bukola's question. So she's asked you about the legality or not of the NNPC's position. Is the NLC asking the federal government to break the law by asking for the subsidy regime to continue beyond June?
No, there's nothing like breaking law when we know how budget can easily be. You make budget, supplementary budget allowed. There are always emergency. You see government, when they want to borrow money, there is always a doctrine of necessity. Well,
you're not speaking to that question, but let's take a quick break. When we return, we'll address it further. Please stay with us.
My people, you know, say election don't finish now. You don't elect president, elect governor, National Assembly members, State of Assembly members. But matter see the tribunal. Well, we have to move forward. First of all, the person where you send go office, it be like say you send a message. You suppose they check upon him, you suppose they call him. You suppose they ask him, the money where I put for your hand, how you take the manager, employment, opportunities, where you promise me for manifesto, you go do them, I be you no do them. Now here, budgets come make it simple for you. If you track government budgets, how government takes spend money for your area from budget.org. You even fit track public projects, all the roads, the schools, the hospitals for your area, tracker.ng. You even fit on allocation for your state, for your local government, me.budget.org. Now, the matter in your hand. The person where you send go office, you supposed to make sure saying they work for you. This message now from Budget.
Ovieme.
Oh, I wish you were here.
I'm always with you.
But it's not the same without you.
MTN 5G's amazing technology will change how we experience life. and the internet. Get ready to encounter the incredible. And remember, no be juju, na MTN 5G.
The Duchess International Hospital caters to every aspect of the family's health needs. A one-stop shop for maternity and child health services, emergency medicine and critical care, medical and surgical subspecialties, dental and eye care, and a range of other subspecialties and services, all available at a single location right here in the heart of Ikeja. And it really doesn't matter if you're paying out of pocket using your HMO or private insurance. We focus completely on providing that world-class affordable healthcare for all the family at all times.
We prevent cavities before they form with Colgate. Colgate locks calcium in.
Keeps cavities out!
New beginnings are always colorful. When we celebrate the start of life's journey, we marry in colors. With our proudly Nigerian Dulux paints, now available in any color. Express your world however you want it. Visit a Dulux Color Center to get any color instantly. Dulux, let's color.
Thanks for staying with us. Mr. Asugune is still here with us. Well, to that question of the law, it's the appropriation law. Now, as we speak, the outgoing National Assembly, I don't know how significantly they will still be able to work with the current government. And the new assembly hasn't really been put in place. So it means then that any action that will be performed by the National Assembly is in abeyance. So there is a law that the federal government must implement. That's the appropriation law, the budget. The budget does not provide for any further incentives or subsidy or whatever it is that you call it. Now, that's on the one hand. On the other hand, the NLC is saying return to status quo. That means increased debt because, as you know, we literally borrow to subsidize. So what exactly is the position of the NLC here? What are the options on the table?
I think NSC is very consistent with his position, which has been there. You can't remove subsidy without any concrete plan to put refineries to effective. And therefore, removal of subsidy and allowing importation to continue is as good as the price hike has no limitation.
When you say concrete plan to repair the refineries, help us understand. Because we all know the situation of the refinery of Nigeria's major state-owned refineries. We all know the situation that we've been turning around and there's been no turnaround for many, many years. So what's the guarantee we have that any plan by any government, even with the support of the NLC, will be believed by the Nigerian that the refineries will work and they will perform so optimally that fuel price will reduce?
It was upon the condition that these were not working that made federal government to set up committee in the past. There's a committee of the whole headed by SGF. I was a member of that committee. And that committee, up to 2022, was still meeting in finding solution to refineries. And the then Minister of State for Petroleum promised and emphasized that December last year, the certain refineries will be in operation. And if that were to be true, by now, the removal of subsidy would have based on certain capacity that we are now producing. Nigerians will say, okay, for now, if we are producing 30% of our consumption, and the sitting president is saying, I am out to boost such production, and I need to save money to do so, give me 6 months. Nigerians will tolerate. But in this case, he said, I will remove subsidy for infrastructure. That means people are truly...
remove subsidy, or that subsidy has been removed?
Subsidy has been removed means it's not ready to extend subsidy.
Would the NLC have agreed that the president will break the law and expand the NLC?
No, it's not breaking law.
Regime?
How do they break law when they want to make loan? How come each time they want to borrow money, there's always doctrine of necessity, there's always emergency?
We just agreed now that the National Assembly is not yet in, the new National Assembly that's supposed to work with this government is not active.
But the National Assembly is not, there's no space, there's no vacuum. As far as we are concerned, the National Assembly is sitting, and therefore their functions are, as always, is valid. I think they should stay up to date.
Yeah.
Anything done in error by National Assembly now, it means the Ninth Assembly has failed.
Yeah, well, as we await the incoming National Assembly, pardon me, I must go back to, you know, the realistic or the unrealistic nature of the new price regime. You know, earlier on you were talking about landing cost. And if we were to look at, you know, the explanations given to us in the past where importation of fuel is concerned, there is the cost of importation, there is the landing cost, there is a transportation cost that marketers will add to whatever they're selling. In the light of that, how realistic is the new price regime of between 488 naira and 550 naira per litre?
The current price we have now is a test study, and that tells you that, as a matter of fact, people bought for 700 naira. The 484 or 85 is more or less almost practicable in Lagos alone. Other states are doing higher than that. And the question is, this very price, no Nigeria can survive it. And I still emphasize that no palliative can cure this challenge except the palliative consider the over 200 million Nigerians. So you don't just target a particular group of people. The current price regime is not realistic, and if nothing is done to suggest that government is still willing.
Is it realistic based on the fact that importation is still ongoing? Or is it realistic based on the fact that, perhaps government is sort of making things easy for the domestic refinery that will start production in July, i.e. Dangote?
No, looking at the dollar exchange today, it is difficult to doubt the matrix that would have caused the realization of that price. But some of us may not have no interest anyway from labor to begin to ask whether it's supposed to be 450 or 480. The question is, anything above the current price without a concrete plan for refineries to kickstart will make us look foolish before the world. Because people know that why Nigerian government was paying subsidy was because it's not refining herself. So doing away with subsidy without you refining after 30 years or more suggests incompetence. That is the problem we have in this country.
So how tenable is the NNPCL's explanation that the entry of Dangote petrochemical refinery into the scene will not bring down the cost of petrol? In
fact, using Dangote as a yardstick or determinant factor for subsidy removal is laughable. Because thank God the president did not even make reference to that. Because Dangote is Dangote. Dangote is not federal government. And let us not suggest that Dangote is now richer than Nigeria. It's not true. And therefore, if Dangote can put refinery in place within a space of years, federal government can do more than 4 refineries of that size in Nigeria. So if we subject Nigerian market to Dangote factory alone, refinery, it means that we have transferred the same corruption we are running away from, that 140-something marketers or importers were enjoying. We have transferred it to one man. So we have not solved the problem.
So that would be based on the logic that Dangote was built from scratch, but over the years we've not been able to turn around our own refineries.
In fact, it will even tempt to Nigerians to believe that federal government has survived the subsidy just to please Dangote. To the extent that subsidy will end in June and Dangote refinery will kickstart in July.
Okay.
It's looking deliberate.
Let's explore options and solutions now. The labor movement, the entire labor movement is going to go into, still in conversation with the federal government. And there's that committee that's being considered, according to the spokesperson of the president for now, that a tripartite committee will be set up with the states, organized labor, and the the organized private sector as well. Now, to the states, I mean, you just talked about one individual, one private organization setting up a world-class refinery. Do you see a situation where states themselves can or should initiate the idea of refineries for their states?
I think that is even one of the statements expected of the president, because this president believes in true federalism. This president, if you listen to what the statement he made in Rivers State, the way I concluded that statement when the then governor was asking him that you will refund me for the road I've constructed, and he said, I owe you nothing, for it's your road. That statement is very powerful. It means control your jurisdiction and make use of it for your people. And if that is true, including power, including anything whatsoever that has economic power to boost Nigeria economy at large.
Is that a presentation? Yeah, my apologies.
Yes.
Is that a position or a suggestion that the NLC or the labor movement will be making to the states themselves in that committee? Because if that kind of thing should come up and there is a timeline to that, perhaps it might ameliorate some of the challenges you're talking about.
Very, very good. If the state government, especially from Niger Delta, would take up responsibility to collaborate with federal government to put in effort to cause refinery to work. Let it be that it is now the state business. Okay. Let it be that as we call Dangote, we also call Delta State Refinery. Let them own it. If federal government can even sell it to state to manage, if that becomes the solution upon which labor will share burden, I think Nigerians will also give a trial. But in the absence of plan to activate refinery, and you just want labor to talk about their minimum wage, and then minimum wage of subsidy, minimum wage on transport, or minimum wage of foodstuff. Don't forget, the impact of this subsidy removal has not entered the market. That is why you see people are still calm. They are looking at this as if it's labor matter. It is not labor matter. This is economic challenge for the living standard of every Nigerian. If you are not careful, everything, including rent, will be affected. Because when landlord cannot also foot his bill, he will increase his rent.
Inevitably, it will be affected.
So everybody.
So it's not about caution anymore because, you know, the reality is upon us. Yes. It's been adjusted. But you were talking earlier about how NLC's absence from that negotiation was strategic. Now, if it is strategic, is this suggestive of a division within the rank of organized labor? And how will it affect what NLC's position would be when and if it commences its own negotiation with the federal government?
Never. Anything division, from what I see, from what I know, from the current government of NLC, TUC, there won't be division. What happened yesterday was why NLC was maintaining a policy statement in its decision not to attend that meeting, following their next decision, that if federal government is not reverting to this old price as a mark of respect to Nigerians, we will not also attend the meeting, because as we speak, federal government should have cautioned the marketers to say, yes, the product in your hand is still subsidized, so you have no reason to hike price until July 4th,
but
June 1st.
Say, Mr. Sugun, if you say there is no division, TUC says on the one hand that we will continue negotiation with the federal government, while we're also asking that he returns to status quo. But NLC is saying we are going ahead with the planned strike on Wednesday, June the 7th. So there is a difference in the positions presented by these organized labor organs to government.
I think what TUC is saying is we will continue to appear before federal government, but our collective position remains. It's the same thing. So they have resolved that if this is not done, we will not give up. And both parties are saying so. That is, for me, that is an interesting point. For organized labor is constant with its position, not to allow federal government go away with its current announcement. And therefore, whatever that happened in the meeting or outside meeting, what we're looking at is what happened last with TUC and what happened last with NLC.
But you know that strike comes with its consequences. And, Nigerian workers are already worried about, the impact of a plant of a strike action, on feeding, on, their income, especially for daily income earners. So what are your recommendations? Are you in support of this planned strike on Wednesday?
The planned strike is something that is inevitable. Some of us would have wished it comes a bit later. And then to allow for solution-based dialogue. And because why the strike is proposed is because they felt that if federal government want to negotiate with us why the price is still high, let us also be on strike against the same government while we negotiate. So it's like you are holding the yam, we want to also help you hold the cutlass. Because now labor is at the mercy of federal government. Anytime they go for meeting, members are still suffering. Federal government have refused to return to status quo. So they want to also proceed on strike for them to know the impact of you saying you want meeting to be done in good faith. You've not played your role. We also want to also make you feel the impact of who we are while we talk.
Okay, just a quick one. First of all, let's be clear. Does the NLC agree that the regime of subsidy is over? Does the NLC agree that the subsidy should be removed?
NLC agreed that payment of subsidy is overdue to go. Good. Not is over.
Okay. It's overdue to go.
Overdue to
so
go.
When is the best time that NLC thinks that this should be, that it should be removed totally?
The time that we have our refineries working.
We haven't had the refineries working optimally ever.
And that is why we have had the subsidy today.
We haven't, our refineries haven't optimally worked since I'm old enough to know how to drink tea.
Okay.
Now, aren't you asking for the impossible, or literally asking that the subsidy regime should not be over?
Oh, the question is, the more we make such demand, that is when government will realize its inability over these years. Because when you are afraid to do what is right for 50 years, until today, 2023, we are still referring to refineries of Nigeria not working, our own crude that we cannot refine at home. Do you know that the country where we refine this product makes more profit than us, the owner of the crude? To the extent that we are the ones sending
the question, because we are running out of time. I want it too quickly. Do you agree? To what time is best? We haven't had the refineries working forever. So is the NLC not saying don't remove this subsidy at all?
No. Everything must be geared to make refiners work.
Okay.
And
now, in the event that, since it is clear that the state, as a country, we have tried to turn around, there has been no turnaround. Would the NLC be supporting a private sector-led refineries movement like the Dangote one? One that the materials will be available, the resources will be available, products will be available at reasonable prices?
The same Nigeria that failed to put refinery in place may lack strategy to privatize refinery.
Okay, but you agree that the state should come up with the refineries?
No, the state can participate.
Okay.
And it will contribute effectively.
It's an endless conversation, Mr. Subsidy. And let's just hope that at the end of the day, the cannon forders, the Nigerian people will not be unnecessary cannon forders in all of these.
It will be interesting to see the position that NLC will be presenting ahead of Wednesday, because Nigerians really do not want a strike, a nationwide strike.
One of them is he's already talking about the states coming to the fray. Now, Mr. Amechi Asugune, former Deputy President, NLC, and Industrial and Labor Relations Consultant, thank you so much for your time this morning. Truly appreciate your time with us this morning. Well, your own contributions to the program will be the natural thing that we'll be going with next. And what do we have? Yes, we do have this tweet from Festus Akimboyewa, and he says, NLC aligned and campaigned with LP that promised to remove oil subsidy immediately in the last election, which means NLC is not independent, and its position now on oil subsidy removal will be seen to be political. When NLC leadership what NLC leadership should be doing now is to negotiate for salary increase and other benefits for workers, and not strikes that will hurt the same workers and poor Nigerians. Well,
Yomi D411 is also talking about the same thing, I believe, and he says there's absolutely nothing wrong in having a different new verdict after having different facts that support. Shows we're human and not trees. 10 years ago, I clamored for subsidy removal. Now I want it gone. I know better now. I also feel the current chaos is a strategy.
Well, Henry says the Politicians have converted Kogi electioneering activities as warfare, with attendant bloodbath in recent times, while Kogi continues to lag behind in development despite its enormous potentials. The principal actors should restrain their fanatical followers and aides from stirring up trouble, as the casualties can unexpectedly come from, well, from nothing. Okay. He says politics is called a game for a reason, not war. Let the security agencies probe this kind of skirmishes and hand out sanctions appropriately. After all, there were policemen and DSS officers present at the crime scene on that fateful day. In fact, they're both attached to both persons, and the images there, they show that. Well, that is the show today. We thank you all for watching. We will see you next time. I'm Chamberlain, so have a very good day.
Well, thank you for sending your feedback this beautiful Monday morning. I'm Maokwe Okun Yusuf. Goodbye.
And thank you for sharing your morning with us. I am Bukola Koka. Bye for now.
Work and pray for Nigeria. I'm Ayo Makinde. Have a wonderful rest of your day.
Ranking, and they don't call me world best for no reason. I only deal with the best, be it auto or business. 100% claim is always guaranteed.
Welcome to World Class Insurance Services. We are Anchor Insurance.
We are insurance.